Today, it's bird photography with the Canon EOS R6 on Behind the Shot. Hi, as always, welcome to Behind the Shot. I'm Steve Brazill, your host, and this is the show where we try and get inside the mind of great photographers by taking a closer look behind one of their shots, trying to understand why they make the choices that they do to create the amazing art that they do. And as always, you can find all the show notes for this show and, for that matter, every episode of Behind the Shot at the website. It's behindtheshot.tv. You can also, of course, find us on YouTube. It's Behind the Shot on YouTube. And if you're interested in subscribing to Behind the Shot, all the links are at the website, behindtheshot.tv, but you can subscribe in an audio format in your podcast app, audio only, or a video format actually in your podcast app. That is assuming that your podcast app supports video. And with that, I want to get right into today's guest because this is the person who has been on this show more than anyone else. Rick Sammon, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing great. It's always great to be on the show with the guy with the greatest voice and who does the most research on his guests. So it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Well, you and I have been friends for a long time, and I'm so glad to have you back on. This is your fifth appearance on Behind the Shot, well more than anybody else. The next closest one is Don Komarechka, and when his new macro book comes out, he'll start to catch you.
Cool.
So we'll just keep having that race. But I'm glad to have you on because you are not only an inspiration to me in your photography and your education, right? You to me, you're kind of like Scott Kelby in that way, and actually David Bergman too. You're one of those people who, to me, is born to educate people on photography, to stand up in front of them or talk with them in a podcast type environment like this. And that kind of takes us to some of your I don't even want to use the word accomplishments, but some of your resume, as it were, right? You are a Canon Explorer of Light, one of very few. I've had a number of them on this show, actually. Explain for those people who don't understand, because every brand has ambassadors, right? Nikon has their ambassadors. Explain what Canon Explorer of Light means.
Well, I've been an Explorer of Light since 2003. So I've been there. I think I'm one of the longest standing Canon Explorers of Light. I'm also one of the oldest. So it's kind of cool. It is an honor. But people ask me all the time, how do you get to be a Canon Explorer of Light? Because it is really an honor. And I say, write 28 books. So at that time, in 2003, I'd written 28 books. Now I have 41. But I use the product. So they go to people who use and genuinely love the product. So what it means, to answer your specific question, is, we go around and we educate people on photography. And it's not like shouting Canon. It's like whispering Canon. So if I'm giving a presentation, I'm talking about, why I'm taking a picture, in addition to how I'm taking a picture. And then I weave in that it was taken with Canon gear, which has never let me down. As you know, I've been to Antarctica 5 times, and in Alaska and the high Arctic, and the gear has never let me down. So
and I myself am a Canon shooter, and you can't see it probably in this 2-up shot that I've got right now, but I've got the Pro 1000 printer behind me that was kindly given to me for a review by Canon. When I tried to return it, they went, no. We just hang on to it. You've used it. You're fine, which was very, very nice of them, because that was the other thing, was they know that I'm not going to, because they told me to keep it, the review was already done. Right? They just know that their gear holds up. And you mentioned that when you became a Canon Explorer of Light, you had 28 books. You've got 41 books now. So
41.
Let's talk about your books for just a second, because you've got books on composition. One of my favorites actually is your pre-visualization book, because I don't think people consciously, intentionally think about pre-visualization enough. Your road trips books, which I have a couple of, and your latest books. So let's start with not the newest one, but the one before that, which is Phototherapy, Motivation, and Wisdom, Discovering the Power of Pictures.
Right. Well,
what is that?
First, thank you for being a part of it. And so after writing 39 picture books, I figured I'm going to try to do something different, because I do love writing. And so I decided to do a book with no pictures. So it's a photography book with no pictures, and it actually is my best-selling book to date. And basically, the title says it all. It's about motivation. It's about inspiration. And it's really more about why we take pictures and not just how we take pictures. You could go on the web and, find 10,000 YouTubes on the exposure triangle or the bokeh
Right.
effect and all that stuff. So this is
What a histogram is. Yeah.
yeah, what a histogram is, right? Or about megapixels. So what this book is about, Steve, it's really about why we take pictures. And if we understand why we take pictures, why we point our cameras in certain ways, and why we either, shoot tight or wide, it's really a reflection of ourselves. One of my favorite expressions is that the camera looks both ways. In picturing the subject, we're also picturing a part of ourselves. And of course, that this is why you're a great podcaster, because you're like a mirror, right? So the microphone hears both ways, right? So whether you're taking a landscape, that's a reflection of yourself, right? And I'm a people person, so most of my pictures are about people and wildlife. I love wildlife too, which we're going to get into. But I think if people understand why they take pictures and look more deeply inside, Ansel Adams said the most important accessory is the 12 inches behind the camera, right? Meaning your brain.
Right.
And
it's true. Our mutual friend Dave Williams, who does a lot for Kelby One, just wrote a blog post. Actually, go look this up. You know what? I'll try and remember to put this in the show notes. But he just wrote a blog post on Scott Kelby's blog, like we all do periodically. He gets different guest bloggers, and what he did was, I think it's 30 different famous photography quotes.
Right.
And I love it because sometimes it's that little sentence, like the most important accessory is the 12 inches behind the camera.
Right.
Sometimes it's those little statements that really hold the most weight. And when you first told me you were doing phototherapy and now the newest book, Photo Quest, my comment to you was, and you said to me, Steve, what do you think about this? Because it's a photo book with no photos, was my favorite book on magic, because you and I both love magic. My favorite book on magic is Darwin Ortiz' Real Magic, which is about 2-3 inches thick.
Right.
On magic. It doesn't have a trick in it. Right. It's all on concepts and theory to make you better at it. And that's what, to me, also Photo Quest is. Photo Quest, discovering your photographic and artistic voice. Yeah. Again, I have a small part in that one. I think it's page 44. Tell me about Photo Quest.
Well, Photo Quest is basically, it's a follow-up to phototherapy, and it's about discovering your photographic and artistic voice. Like, you have a voice. My friend Alec Aaron says that his camera is his microphone. I think that's really a good thing. It's his way to express himself. So what Photo Quest is about, it's by, it says right on the cover, Rick Sammon and the All-Star Photo Mentors. And I got this idea from seeing Ringo Starr and the All-Stars.
Ringo Starr and his All-Star Band.
Right, and he has great people, and the whole the collectiveness of that made seeing him really great. So I figure I have enough books, so I invited 36 of today's top photographers, instructors, including yourself, to participate. I've Scott Kelby in there, Frank Dorhoff, Don Komarechka's in there, and I did this, and it's kind of fun. I asked everyone to say what their superpower is. And for your listeners who say, what the heck is this guy talking about, a superpower? I started off that chat. Well, let me ask you a question, Steve. When you think of a superhero, superhero now, who is the most powerful superhero? Who has real?
It would depend on which fan you ask, but to me, it would probably always go back to Superman.
Of course. So Superman has superpowers. Batman doesn't have any superpowers.
No.
He has no superpowers, yet he's a superhero because he uses his brain and his courage.
Arguably that's his power, right? That's his superpower. Like Santana. You love music, and I love Santana, and I think you love Santana too, right? Oh, yeah.
He's
I finally
really
got to photograph him, in fact.
Oh, gosh, I wish I were there. I saw him at Woodstock, and I didn't get to photograph him. But anyway, Santana's superpower, if you take like music out of it, he's great on guitar. He's great at recording. But what's his superpower that makes him great? And I think it's his just wanting to communicate that feeling, that love of music, and being aware of the effect of his music on other people. I also think he's a very spiritual person. So I think for your listeners, if you could ask yourself, what's your superpower that makes you good at something? And if you're good at something, you're usually good at a lot of things. And that's how I got the idea for this chapter, by the way, from my son, Marco. I said, Marco, you're good at one thing. You're good at a lot of things. And I think I've told you he's getting his PhD in finance. He says, well, we talk about this all the time, that it's a superpower inside, like Darwin. Darwin's
Right.
superpower, Charles Darwin, his superpower wasn't being like totally tuned into nature. His superpower was being so detailed oriented that he could like write down every single thing about every species. So for your listeners, if you could ask yourselves, what your superpower is that makes you good at something, I think it'll give you a better understanding of why you photograph.
I think it also gives you a better understanding of how that morphs into other areas. Because like you said, I think talent in one area, talent at all, tends to lend itself to talent in other areas.
Yeah.
You, I mentioned as an educator, and I mentioned Dave Williams with doing the Kelby One blog and a lot of stuff for Kelby. You are a Kelby One instructor, and for those people that don't know Kelby One, please go look up Kelby One. It's the people who do Photoshop World and stuff. But you have over 20 classes on Kelby One. You do podcasting regularly, not just as a guest stint like this, but you did your Picturing Success podcast, and now you're doing your phototherapy Facebook group, which is a play off the title of the book. Yeah. And you're live streaming to that with Juan Pons, and I know Alec Aarons has been on there too. You do seminars when things are open. You're kind of an all-around guy, which makes sense that you're a Canon Explorer of Light. And as soon as I started seeing rumors of the new Canon gear, and this was months ago on canonrumors.com or any of the other rumor sites that are out there, I started thinking to myself, I know he can't say anything, but I kind of want to get him on Zoom or Skype and just ask him a question and see if his eyes change to indicate that he's got something. Because Canon made some rather amazing announcements when the Canon EOS R came out. And I know people who love the EOS R, you being one of them. Yep. My buddy Anthony D'Angio also loves the Canon EOS R and shoots a lot of video actually with it. When that came out, however, there were from a lot of people a lot of complaints saying it's only got one card slot, or it's this issue or that. This isn't the Pro body that represents the 5D series that we were hoping for, or the 1D series. This announcement checked those boxes. You've got a 5 series mirrorless, you've got a 6 series mirrorless. And they in many ways mirror those worlds, where the 5 has the weather sealing of a 5D Mark IV. Right. The 6 has a weather sealing of a 6D. And there's other differences. But down the line, other than megapixels and 8K video, they're very similar. Like 20 frames per second or 12 frames per second based on electronic or mechanical shutter on both of them. Great processor, the Digic 10 or Digic X on both of them. 2 card slots on both of them, although one of them is the 2 SD slots, the other one is a CF Express slot. But arguably, and people are asking me this all the time, arguably the 6 for what I shoot may be better than the 5. Because it's less megapixels, which means bigger photo sites on the sensor. It's similar to a 1DX Mark III sensor. So it's going to be better at high ISO. In fact, it actually has higher ISO settings available to you than the 5. One other big difference is the 5 has the top LCD panel, whereas the 6 has the knob. You shot all the pictures that we're going to talk about today on the Canon EOS R6. And as we're talking, I'm going to show some of these shots. But what I want to know from you is, since you already shot with the R, what is your honest opinion about the R6? How's it feel in your hand? Which is, to some people with big hands like me, a complaint about mirrorless from some companies. No names being mentioned. Sony. So I'm curious what you think about the R, having actually used it for shots like the one that I have up of these 2 geese fighting. I mean, what's it like to hold this camera and actually use it, the R6?
Right. Well, people ask me all the time at that question, what do you think of the camera? And I just send them the picture, right? I mean, and, the file size for everything that most people are going to do. Someone said today, they're talking about the file size. They said, if you want to make a picture as big as a Peter Lick makes, in Vegas, that are like
right
24 feet long. I don't know how long they are, but they're giant. You might want to get a higher megapixel camera. But for what the average person does, it's perfect. I'm making like tack sharp of these bird pictures on my Canon Pro 100, 17 by 22 inch prints, but I'm sure I could make a 20 by 24 inch print from that. And who's going to do that, right? Not too many
Right.
people are even going to do that. But what's great about the camera is the in-body image stabilization. And I'm shooting with the f11 lenses. And I got to tell you,
Okay, so the new lenses, you're talking the 600 and the 800,
Yeah.
and they're not variable aperture. They are fixed at f11, right?
right now, a lot of people probably can't even believe you're saying that, right? Because they never heard of a fixed f11 lenses, right? And they would say, oh, f11, I got to shoot at a high ISO. My picture's going to be grainy. They're going to be noisy and blah, blah, blah. Well, if you have that shot back up there again, you can see every feather on that Canada Goose's, the wings, the body,
The two geese having a fight, yeah.
The two geese having a fight. And by the way, the key to both of those shots, if we did a poll, people probably wouldn't guess what the key was getting those shots was, but it was listening. That pond is about just 100 feet away from our house or less. And every morning when I got involved in this project, I would listen. And when they start honking, we call it honking, I ran down. And that's when I saw like the fight. That's when I saw them landing. So a great bird photography tip is listening. It's very, very important in your backyard too, because the blue jays have a different sound than the red-winged blackbird and the woodpeckers and whatever.
Well, one of the shots you sent me is this a little hawk?
Oh yeah, that's a little hawk. That's at a raptor center, not too far from here. And I chose a dark background because I wanted the bird to stand out. But at f11, that picture, I forget the exact ISO. My average ISO shooting with those lenses was probably ISO 2000 or ISO, which is nothing these days, right? But right. I have pictures. I have some geese pictures taken at ISO 10,000. And they're pretty darn good. Okay, if I make a giant printer, they're going to have a little noise in it. Yes, but as you know, you know my father's expression about noise. If a picture's so boring that you notice a noise, it's a boring picture. It's really true. But that you could, and I'll tell you this. And people, I've been doing workshops for 20 years. Anyone who's who's listening here has been on a workshop with me will tell you that they never saw Rick Sammon use a 600 and 800 millimeter lens. Never. Because it's too heavy, too bulky to take to Africa. It's going to make, you may not be able to get it on the plane because
you can't hold it.
Well, some people can hold a 600 millimeter lens, but then you need a tripod and a gimbal head and all this. Plus, they're super expensive, right? So these lenses, I think they're under $1,000.
They're under $1,000. The 600, I think, was $600 or $700, and I think it's $900 or $800 for the 800 millimeter lens and their diffracted optics. And by keeping it f11, by the way, what makes lenses huge and heavy is when you go 2.8.
Right now, can you
keeping
use
it f11? Let them keep it, smaller, and let them keep it lighter. And these do have IS in them, which is nice. The other thing that was interesting, and since you've used it, I'm kind of curious. You're the first person I've been able to talk to that used it. They discussed that it can collapse 25%.
Yes.
So it slides out and slides in. Is that weird to use?
No, it's really cool. When I got the lenses, I was really surprised because they were like this. Basically, you twist it and then you expand it. So they're super compact and they're super light. It's kind of like, they're so light. It's like, actually, I made a video for Canon. It's on YouTube. Probably do a search, or you could get the link, or I could send you the link. I could juggle those lenses. They're so light. But I never use these long lenses, so of course I missed some shots. And people say, well, you're locked into f11. It's so limiting. Well, here's what I say. I say, I used to have a grand piano, right? 88 keys. I could do a lot on that. Beethoven and Rachmaninoff,
right.
Keith Emerson, right? could Billy Joel could do a lot on Elton John could do a lot on that. So if you give them an electric piano like Chick Corea plays, right? 73 keys, it's limited. You can't do everything. But if you know that that's what you're working with, so yes, you have to it's F11, so you're boosting your ISO. And again, I boosted that. Like you said about the image sensor. That is the same one as the 5D Mark IV. Is that correct? You're more technical.
Actually, I think it's the
than I-
1DX Mark III. It's
The
a
one-
similar sensor to the 1DX Mark III on the
Yeah.
R6.
Yeah. So that's just amazing, right? That in this relatively small, compact, lightweight, relatively affordable body. So again, when people say, I have a picture of a cardinal where, in bird photography, if the eye's not in focus and well lit, I say you missed the shot, right? So we could see this is what I'm going for in all those pictures. I want that eye in focus, but all these
Well, and
pictures,
you played with the shutter speed on this one too, with those wings. And that's
Yeah,
the thing to me about the R6. Those wings are beautifully blur and soft. The depth of field is even F11 awesome because you're at 600 millimeters or 800 millimeters, and yet the eye is tack.
But you do the same thing with your rock concert photography, right? You have the musician's face sharp, and you have, either the drumsticks move. I think I saw a picture where the drumsticks were blurred that you took.
Yeah.
I wanted to weave in this joke, but I forgot in the beginning when you said we're going to talk about the Birds. I was thinking of the rock group, the Birds.
Oh, yeah.
That maybe
Graham
a lot
Nash.
of your younger listeners never heard of.
Well, they've probably heard them, but do not know who it was. So let me say this really quick before we pull up. And I've shown some of the other shots that we, that you supplied to me. These will all be in the gallery at the website, like the owl that's flying by, or I just showed the cardinal shot, the goose, or it's not a goose, it's a swan that's at the nest, which is just amazing. And we'll get to all of those shots in the blog post. They'll all be over there for you to look at. But before I go any farther and we bring up quote unquote today's image, I do want to do a disclaimer here. The Canon EOS R6 and EOS R5 are not out in public yet. They're not available yet. They'll be available at the end of July. So Rick, being a Canon Explorer of Light, was provided a copy before they actually went to market. So all the images that you are seeing here, these images were shot with a pre-production sample of the Canon EOS R6 camera. They are not final body. It is not a final body that he shot with. So just be aware of that. It's effectively a prototype body. So all the images that you're seeing, firmware hasn't been locked down. That'll be locked down until the day of release. Just want to make that, in fact, it'll be locked down until the day of release and then probably patched afterwards. It's normal for cameras. So just be aware. These are pre-production sample body pictures of that. So with that in mind, let's get into, say again, go ahead.
Well, you mentioned that owl picture, and you mentioned what I like about you asked what I like about the camera. This is amazing. I would say about 20 years ago, I wrote an article, and it said that they should rename lenses. Like rather than calling it a wide-angle lens, they should call it a landscape lens, right? So if I were in charge of renaming lenses, I would call this like the 600 millimeter like wildlife and sports photography lens. Because outdoor wildlife and sports photography lens. Because for wildlife, what this camera has, it has animal tracking in it and people tracking, and it switches back and forth. You could choose animal tracking or people tracking. So that owl flying right toward me, this is amazing. I mean, I get excited about this because you're looking at the viewfinder. You see all these little squares, and then the square goes right to the animal's eye. So like as I said before, Steve, if the eye's not in focus, it will let you miss the shot. So animal tracking, I think, is first of all, when I started, who would have even thought of autofocus cameras, right? But now we have cameras with animal tracking in them. So for any wildlife photographer who wants to photograph animals, and all these pictures we were talking about this before, have gesture in them. When you do your rock photography, I love the gesture that you capture. So that's what I'm going for in these pictures. I'm going for gesture.
So wait until you see the picture we chose to actually break down today. And I just want to remind you that the pictures I just showed, which are more samples of that pre-production EOS R6 from Canon, those pictures and the quote unquote picture that we're going to dissect today on Behind the Shot or look at detail in, those are all available on the website. The website is behindtheshot.tv. Make sure that you head over there. You can see a full blog post about Rick. There's links to everything. I'll add the links to the video for Canon that he did, and I'll also add the link to the one that I mentioned for Dave Williams that he did on Scott Kelby's blog with all the photo quotes. Again, a reminder, if you like what you're seeing and you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor, subscribe, and make sure that you click that bell. Otherwise, you won't be notified every time I release something new. Click the bell and you will. And of course, if you prefer to watch in a podcast app or listen in a podcast app, that's cool too. We have two different feeds. The standard Behind the Shot is audio only. And then, of course, we have Behind the Shot video, which is the video feed, also available in the podcast app of your choice. My favorite one right now is RSS Radio, which is available on iOS. I don't know if it's available on Android, but it's easy to find out. So let's get into today's shot. And before we do, I'm going to, as I bring this shot up, I am going to try, as I always do, to describe it, which is always difficult for me. But this one is going to actually, I think, be one of the easier ones because it's majestic. That's the first thought that hit me when I saw this shot, is it's majestic. It's a Canadian goose on the water, acting like a rock star, right? I mean, looking straight down the barrel of the lens, full wing spread, super rich color. And the color, when I saw the color, it reminded me of Canon's mirrorless cameras, in particular the EOS R, and now this shot with the pre-production EOS R6. So the other thing is a lot of detail. There's so much kind of detail in the wings and in the breast area of this bird that it's somewhat surprising. The picture that Rick sent me the first time, because I use a certain size for video, right? But the first one he sent me was bigger resolution. And when you look at this picture on a screen at full resolution, I don't know that you're going to get this on a 1080p video. The detail, not just when I say detail as in like detail in feathers, right? Or water droplets on the breast area of the bird. The detail in the color transitions really kind of caught me off guard. It creates kind of a depth of field, not depth of field, wrong word, a 3D type depth to the wings and the feathers. It feels 3D.
The lighting had a lot to do with that.
But still, and then you've got this wonderful, a lot of times when I see a 600 millimeter lens, the depth of field fall off is so fast that it actually kind of almost looks fake, like somebody blurred the background, because all you see is the bird tack sharp. You see the background so blurry, it's like something weird. This is because of the F11, is this super smooth fall off. So let's talk about this image just a little bit here. You shot this with the 600 or the 800?
600.
All the pictures that I've shown were the 600?
That I don't know. I'd have to check.
Did you use the 800 too?
I use the 800 too, but someone asked me the difference today, and I said, well, with all lenses, the longer the lens, the harder it is to use. So I use, out of the two lenses, I also use the 100 to 500, which is amazing. I mean, that lens is amazing, but most of the pictures were taken with the 600 around our pond. This is on the opposite side of the pond, and with that focal length, I don't think this great bird knew I was there. It was about to take off. Now, you talked about the light, so I could say could be the cover of my next book, Steve. Rick Sammon's Dumb Luck Shots, right? I mean, everything.
Somehow, I don't believe this was dumb luck.
Well, I mean, thank you, but the background, it was close enough to the background where we have that nice fall off. But a photography tip, if the highlights are overexposed and washed out, if they're more than a stopover, you can't rescue them. So I'm always exposing for the highlights. So in the camera, the R6, I have the histogram activated and the highlight alert activated. And so I'm doing test shots of the other geese around the pond. But getting back to listening, I heard the honking and I went down there and I know a spot where I can hide and they land. But
let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
You said you're listening and you hear the honk.
Yeah.
What is that? I am not a bird photographer, so my ignorance will be really obvious right now.
So
what does the honk tell you?
It tells you they're.
You don't speak geese.
No, they're excited. It sounds like a honk, 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 like that. So when they're coming in for a landing, they honk. When they're fighting, they're honking. When they're going to take off, they start to honk. When they're going to have a fight, they start to honk. Right. So just like lions, roar when they're going to have a fight or when they're about to mate or whatever. So listening told me go down to the pond, and the light was just so beautiful. It's kind of like top side light. If you look, it's coming from about 2 o'clock, right? And I'm sure you've heard the expression, oh, you can't take a picture between 10 and 2 o'clock. Well, the lights, you can see the shadows coming from up to the, almost over and behind. But I'm using a fast shutter speed. I forget what the ISO on this was. It was either 2000.
Actually pulled up the EXIF data on this shot, and what I saw, and I'm assuming it's correct.
It is
600 millimeter, 4,000th of a second, which explains the crispness. I mean, just crisp on those wings. Right. F11, obviously, because it's the F11 lens. ISO 2500.
ISO 2500, right. Again, I remember telling my dad when I was growing up, I didn't want to push a Tri-X 400 to 800, right? So this is
so clean, people. This image is so clean. It's at 2500. I'd kill for a body like that. Oh, you know what? That just made me think of something. By the way, I should mention also in the EXIF data, it showed aperture priority.
Yes. A lot of people are surprised
that I shoot
a
lot, right?
All the time, even birds. But I'm keeping an eye on the shutter speed. So I'm thinking about that exposure triangle. So even bald eagles that are flying at 90 miles an hour, I'm shooting on the aperture priority mode, and I'm adjusting the aperture with a lens that you could do that on to get the right shutter speed. So here I wanted to stop the action. I think you're going to show some other pictures where we have the wings blurred to add a sense of motion to the picture.
Right, like that one that was the cardinal.
Yeah,
is just. And the other thing I like about the cardinal shot actually is just the color. It's just as a cardinal would be. The wing color and the back of the head color is just amazing. But
it's
this
kind
shot,
of backlit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of backlit. So you get that rim light on that back wing on the cardinal shot. And again, for the people listening to audio, I don't normally do a ton of pictures during a show because about 50% of you listen on audio. And I don't want you to have to try and follow along as I'm switching a million pictures. But I need to do this on this show because we're talking about a camera that's at the time of this podcast release, new from Canon, but more importantly, B, a huge release as far as importance is concerned from Canon. There's one thing I was thinking about. This was a pre-production body.
Right.
So DPP, Digital Photo Pro, the Canon software, probably hadn't been updated to edit a RAW image. Clearly, Lightroom is not ready for a RAW image. So did you shoot these JPEG?
Yep. I mean,
these are JPEG shots straight out of camera, pretty much.
They're all I did have the software, but the thing is this: if you know what you're doing, if you get the right in-camera exposure, I know a lot of people. There's a podcaster out there. I shoot RAW, and all this stuff. All these pictures are JPEG. Are JPEG files. And by the way, getting back to this picture, and all the pictures, animal tracking. This is the key. I mean, I'm so blown away by that.
How far away, with you shooting on a 600 here, how far away are you from this main geese picture with the wings out looks like a statue on the corner of a building?
Well, it looks like that also, like Game of Thrones. When I said this to Canon, do you ever use the flame filter in Photoshop?
I do not. I probably should start now.
You could add a flame. I'll send you the picture. I put, because they said it looks like Khaleesi's dragon in Game of Thrones. So I put the flames like coming down from the mouth to the water. And they thought it was, some people thought it was funny.
So how far away are you?
Yeah, I think if I had to guess, it's 24. Maybe it did it. This is probably about half the frame. So maybe it's 50 feet away. So this is crop.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, this is actually a crop. And the one I have up is the 16:9, but on the blog post I have the full crop, which is just a little more on the top and a little bit more on the bottom.
And the cardinal, you know how small a cardinal is? That was probably about 25% of the frame.
Really?
Birds are really,
okay.
Backyard birds are really hard, much harder. You go to Bosque del Apache, Alaska, Antarctica, much easier to get bird pictures than in your backyard.
So you mentioned animal tracking as well as normal human, / eye tracking.
People, yeah.
How responsive speed-wise was the R6, the EOS R6. You know, you've got the IS going. I'm assuming you were using the IS.
Yeah.
In-body IS on the 6, plus the lens has 3 stops of IS. I don't know if that combination adds together or not, but how responsive, when you pointed a bird and that bird moves, how responsive, because these are inexpensive lenses. I didn't expect that you'd get super fast autofocus out of them, but it looks like you did.
Well, that's what I said. When people ask me the questions, I took a picture of the Croton Dam where I live at sunrise. They say, is it good for landscape? I just send the picture, right? So they say, yeah, and just check out the picture. Zoom in on the picture. The proof,
which I have up right now. I just
oh.
pulled up the Croton Dam shot, and I told Rick in the green room, and I'll say it again here. I have known Rick for years. I have seen so many Croton Dam shots from Rick. I have never seen a Croton Dam shot, Croton on Hudson Dam, like this one. There is something here about the warmth on the water and the sunrise in the background. But then at the top, you have a wonderful color sky that's not too warm. And the waterfall itself, which is long exposured and blurred, the waterfall itself, because it's not in the sun, right? The sun's coming across that lake, but really, really shallow angle of attack. And then you have the waterfall coming off. The waterfall's getting none of that ambient warm light. And so the waterfall is super cool in white balance, color, temperature. And the mix of this and the long exposure, what it did to the surface of the water. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. But seriously, it's my favorite dam shot. I shouldn't say it's my favorite damn shot that you have ever done. Here's a question I have for you, going back to our chosen shot here. Well, you've been shooting the EOS R. This new one has the animal tracking and has a number of other features available in it that the R did not. Did you notice, as a user of both, one of the rare people that has shot both an R and an R6, did you notice a difference in the autofocus or performance of the camera?
Well, we've lived here for 35 years, and I never photographed fast-moving birds in my backyard. So I can't really compare. I have photographed fast-moving birds in Alaska with the top-of-the-line cameras, Canon cameras. So I would say that it's just fast enough. But getting back to the dam picture, if we could for a second. Yeah, thank you very much. But there's an old expression in photography: never underestimate the importance of a good subject. I mean, so it was just a beautiful, beautiful sunrise. But technically, if you look at the dynamic range of that image, that you have a bright glare on the water, you have bright sun, and you can see into the shadows. And that's
this is pretty close to perfect that you'd get on a shot like this.
Let me ask you a question. I did some processing on it, of course. You see that tree, that log?
Yeah, that's sticking on the left.
I contemplated taking that out. And I said, I'm going to leave it in because it's natural. But speaking of geese, I don't think your viewers could see this, but if you zoom in right behind that, this camera is so sharp, you could see 2 geese that are, hundreds of feet away from me. So it's a dynamic range. And
on that log?
No, they're behind the log. There's two little dots. They may look like dust specks, but they're 2 little.
All right, hold on, because now I got to zoom in.
They're 2 little birds there.
I can't see it on this screen, but I'm looking at a tiny screen. Hopefully other people can watch this and actually, see it hit. Still, I love the shot. That's the main thing. I love the shot. So let me ask you a question about something. Because the EOS R6 does, and for that matter, the EOS R5 too, which kind of surprised me. They're the same. It just makes the EOS R6 such an amazing value. They both do 20 frames. I mentioned this earlier. 20 frames per second electronic, 12 frames per second mechanical shutter. How does that help you with, compared to using a standard DSLR? How does that, unless you pay for a 1DX Mark III or something, how does that help you shooting that many frames on a subject like this, wings open bird?
gesture. That's the thing. And it's the same thing with football players. You look at the cover of Sports Illustrated, and you look at the football photographs. If the football's like if the quarterback's passing it and it's like right over the eye, like this, it's going to ruin the shot. But it's like right by the eye. So this helps you capture more gestures, so you get a wider choice. And the geese fighting picture that we talked about before, I took a lot of pictures there, and I captured. These geese are moving fast. They're flapping their wings really fast. With that cardinal picture, I think that was taken. Can you pull up the information on the cardinal picture? If not, it's okay.
But yeah, I can go try and find it really quick.
It's okay.
Let me ask you this while you're doing that.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead and say what you were going to say.
What I was going to say is birds' wings move very fast, and the closer they are, the more exaggerated. With all subjects, the more exaggerated that movement is. So you have to shoot at high shutter speeds and a fast frame rate to capture the exact coolest gesture. Same thing with a golf swing.
Which shot did you want the EXIF data on? The cardinal?
The cardinal, the red bird with the wings kind of like backlit.
Yeah, I got you. Got it right here. Hold on. So that picture is, let's see here. It's f11, obviously.
Yeah.
5,000 ISO.
Mm-hmm.
And
5,000, and look how sharp it is.
5,000 ISO, yeah. And it's, people, seriously, go look on the blog post if you're listening to audio. 1/800th of a second. So you dragged it a little bit compared to the actual chosen shot for today,
right.
To get that wing blur. So I'm curious.
Yeah, an 800th of a second that means the shutter would go off 800 times a second, right? Right. 1/800th of a second is not fast enough to freeze. So this is why you want a camera with a high frame rate.
Let me ask you this. Was there anything on the R6 that surprised you that you didn't expect? You kind of knew what you were getting. They probably gave you a rundown of it when they sent you the pre-release body. But was there anything that you used and still went, oh, wow?
I think I was surprised at how, that high frame rate. But I think it was a combination. It was a combination of focal length lenses that I never used. So this was my assignment. Hey, Rick, try this camera that you never used. And we know you used mirrorless cameras. Try using these long lenses that, you never used. So, and I only had a few weeks to do this. So that goose shot there was taken about just a few weeks after I got the camera, and I have a whole series of them. So
let me talk about this shot really quick. This bird is dead accurate in the center of the shot. The way you cropped it is absolutely spot on. The position is good. The amount above and below is perfect.
Well, it's cropped.
A crop. Yes, but you and I have had this discussion privately before. You mentioned other podcasts out there that I Shoot Raw or whatever. And I hear so many people say, I never crop. And my attitude is, well, you know what? If you chose a 24 over a 70, or you chose a 70 over a 24, you just cropped, right? You chose a different frame field of view based on the lens you chose. You're cropping anyway.
Right.
Just make the perfect shot. And you cropped it so absolutely perfect here. And the other thing is your angle of view. You're down at the bird's eye level. You're not standing up 7 feet in the air he's on the water. You're a foot off the water on land plus 6 foot tall. You shot this at the right angle. Did you, with this being a JPEG, did you process this at all?
Oh yeah, I processed all my pictures. Basically what I do is we talk about the highlights. And there's a swan picture there in there. I don't know if you showed it yet, but I don't want well, if we stick with this picture, if you look at the breast, you mentioned the detail before.
Right.
So I do check the histogram. I do check the highlight alert. But if highlights are overexposed a little, I will tone them down in Camera Raw, and I use Camera Raw. One of the few people probably who's been on your awesome podcast who uses Camera Raw more than Lightroom. But so I do that, and sometimes I darken the edges a little, and then I enhance the color.
In what software? Mostly it's Camera Raw and Lightroom. Do you use anything else? Because I think you use Nik, don't you? Color effects.
Oh, I love the Nik stuff. Not for any. I'm looking at the pictures here. I didn't use Nik for any of these. The Nik Color Effects Pro by DxO Optic. No, these are all done in Lightroom. I mean, in Photoshop.
And no
Camera
Photoshop?
Raw. No, I'm correcting myself. You mentioned Lightroom, so I was thrown off. Camera Raw. Yeah, people
Okay.
come on my workshops. They can't believe I just use Photoshop and Camera Raw.
Yeah, that's amazing to me. There's one thing that having not held the R6,
Yeah.
that I keep thinking about, and I kind of hinted to it earlier, and there are other manufacturer bodies for mirrorless cameras. And I'm going to use the Sony as an example. And I don't misunderstand me. I have friends that shoot Sony. I have friends and acquaintances that love their Sony A7R3s or whatever. And that's great. And they make great pictures. Okay, cool. I can make great pictures with my phone nowadays. I mean, there's a lot of great cameras out there. But here's the problem that I have, and that is I'm not a huge guy. I'm 6'1" almost, and my hands are normal sized. But the size of those bodies on a Sony, let's say, the size of those bodies are such that when I hold the handle, the lenses mount. I'm trying to do it where they can see it on screen.
Yeah, I understand.
But the lenses mount, and then the lens flanges out before it goes straight. So it comes back, flanges in to connect to the little mount area. And my fingers get hit by the lens, my finger knuckles, as I hold it, because the body just, to me, doesn't feel great in my hands. And the reason I shoot Canon is a huge part. Their bodies feel comfortable in my hands. You and I are about the same size, height-wise, et cetera. You're a little taller than me. How does that body, the R6, feel in your hand?
Getting back to music, this will answer your question. Well, the answer is it feels great. When I play the piano, if I'm at a Steinway or Yamaha grand piano, I feel better, and I think I sound better than if I'm playing a Wurlitzer upright that I grew up on. Okay, because I feel better. I like the feel of it. And I know it's called ergonomics. I know it sounds kind of funny, can you take better pictures, if you feel better about it. And I think you could do anything better if you feel good, which is why I always wear a t-shirt. I went to Catholic school and I had to wear a tie in May and in September when it was really with no air conditioning. And my mother had me wear wool pants. So my main goal in life, I'm serious, ask my wife. I'm in shorts now. My main goal in life is to be comfortable with this air conditioner or a t-shirt, Steve, or whatever. So having a comfortable camera and having the controls, and the R6 now has 3 little control wheels on it. And I know that sounds, the cameras are over at the house. It has a control wheel on the back, which I had on the 5D Mark IV, which the R doesn't have. And believe it or not, I switched to Canon in 1996 because of the feel of the camera. It did have fast.
It matters.
It does matter. That wheel lets me fine tune the exposure. So you could actually program this camera so the 3 different wheels do different things. And there's also a control ring on the lens, which is amazing. But getting back to the piano. Same thing with the guitar. If I feel good playing my Paul Reed Smith guitar and I don't feel, or my Fender Precision bass, and I have a relatively inexpensive bass over here. Actually, this costs about $100, but I have it over here to practice. I have my good guitar over there, but I feel better on the other guitar. So that feel, I think your musician listeners and viewers can relate to that.
Yeah, I tell people when I help people or coach people on just doing this type of thing, right? Yeah. You're going to go do Skype or you're going to go do Zoom or whatever it is. I tell people, take the time to, when you are going in to do it, make sure that you've taken a shower or put on cologne or anything you would normally do during your day if you were going to go out. So that, don't just go, oh, well, it's in my house. It doesn't matter, because it changes your voice. It changes your presentation. It changes your feel. It changes so many things. There's one question I don't think I've ever asked Rick Sammon. And I want to, because everybody. You shoot, you specialize in not specializing. You photograph everything at a level of a Canon Explorer of Light, which very few people can do, right? great photographers doesn't necessarily mean you're a great photographer in multiple genres. You happen to be. So I'm curious for your frame of mind.
This is quite a buildup. I'm getting
No,
nervous.
it's an easy question. It's an easy one. Who is a photographer or, photographic artist out there that you think people may not know about that they should follow?
Wow, that's who they. I think I might answer that by suggesting people go on 500 Pixels or on Instagram.
Okay.
And the work, well, the work that some people are doing is just amazing. Getting back to music, Susan, you have Spotify, right?
Yeah.
So
and Apple Music, yeah.
Right. So we listen to Spotify and we're driving around in the car and we hear this person, oh, that's Chick Corea or oh, that's Santana. And it's not. It's someone who's as good or maybe even better. And you never heard of them. So I'd recommend if you're into music and you want to discover great photographers, great musicians, go on Spotify or wherever. And same thing, go on 500 Pixels. I will say this, though. There's a difference between having 1, 2, or 3 amazing shots over a lifetime and having like a body of work over an amazing lifetime. My friend Darryl Galeen, he's a fellow Canon Explorer of Light. You want to see great butterfly pictures. He does great horse pictures and wildlife. He's been to Antarctica. But if you want to see, he has a butterfly garden in his backyard. So he's doing amazing.
Your first book was butterflies.
My first coffee table book, The Beauty of Flying Flowers, right. Did I send that to you? I hope so.
No. I've never seen that book in person. I've seen pictures of it online. He's got it next to him.
I don't, because I only have one copy left. It's in the house. I just have this cover here of the book. But anyway, there are so many. I wouldn't want to say someone because then I might hurt someone's feelings. But I
totally get it. I will say this, since you brought up music, if you are into the jazz type feel, go look up Tal Wilkenfeld.
Oh,
who is
the
an amazing bassist. There's a video of Tal Wilkenfeld playing with Jeff Beck.
I've seen it
when she's really young. She's not old now. She's super young still. But I'm talking like I think she was like 16 or something.
Yeah.
Where Jeff Beck gets on his knees and starts bowing at her.
I know.
And it's just, you got to look up Tal Wilkenfeld. So there's a good one. So
Rick Sammon. Tal is amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Just, she was at Bass Player Live when I did photographs years ago and just amazing. So let me just remind everybody of a couple of things. First of all, the images that you are seeing on this were shot on a pre-production sample of the Canon EOS R6 camera, which was not a final version of the body. It's not out yet. It will be tweaked. And yet, even then, these pictures are amazing. The one shot at 2500 ISO or 5000 ISO for the cardinal shot are shocking. You can see the pictures at the website behindtheshot.tv. You can see all of Rick's links, his social media links, his website, his workshops, all of that, and links to his books that we talked about, right? At the very beginning, we talked about phototherapy and PhotoQuest. Make sure that you check those out if you want to. They're on Amazon, and I've got links in the blog post. And if you're watching the video, his lower thirds have been coming up. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you, my friend. You're really so good at what you do. It's always an honor, a pleasure, and fun. And I remember when we were out in Vegas, we went to the Valley of, was it the Valley of Fire?
No, Red Rock.
We went to Red Rock Canyon, and that was like a ton of fun. So I can't wait to hang out with you again and shoot and have some fun after all this craziness is over.
We should mention that your Mount Rainier workshop was postponed from October. It's been moved to next year. People can find out information on that workshop, which I'm hoping to go to based on scheduling.
I hope so.
Next year. So look at that. You're doing that with Freddie Clark, actually, who's an amazing food and beverage photographer. Look up Freddie Clark, actually. That's a good
Freddie's great.
Amazing guy. And then he's also doing the workshop in New Orleans that you and I will be participating in. And you can look up details on that through Freddie's site. So again, Rick, thank you so very much. I appreciate your coming on and talking about new unreleased gear. I'm envious that you got to photograph with it.
Well, it proves something that if you really try to do, if you set a goal I think we can accomplish it. I always tell people, shoot for the stars, and if you miss and you only hit the moon, you're still doing okay. So set your goals really high.
I agree. Rick Sammon, Canon Explorer of Light, ricksammon.com is where you can find all of his information. And before we go, just a couple of quick notes for you. First of all, I want to remind you about the thing that I'm doing with Don Komarechka. We are doing our critique shows. The critique shows only air on the YouTube channel at Behind the Shot. It just go to YouTube and search Behind the Shot, or youtube.com/Behind the Shot, and you can find it. And those we stream live. We're doing once a month. And if you want to get in on those, all you got to do is go over to Flickr, join the Behind the Shot photo group on Flickr, and submit your image to the group. That's part of it. Here's the key. You can submit your image and not want it critiqued. If you want it critiqued, you have to make sure that you actually put the Flickr tag BTS critique on the photo, not in the description, but they have their own tagging system at Flickr. BTS critique, all one word, and that will get you in on that. And one last thing, Rick Sammon, again, just thank you very, very much for doing this. Is there anything else people need to know that you're doing, such as, and you know what? I just thought of what it is. Your Facebook group, Phototherapy. Go search for
Yes.
Rick's Phototherapy group. And how often are you streaming live there?
We do it usually once a week, sometimes twice a week.
And that's with Juan Pons. And is Alec going to be a regular on that now?
Yes, Alec is our moderator. We started on Zoom, and we actually got Zoom bombed twice. So he was. It was hard. It was beyond horrible. So now we're doing YouTube. Thanks to your suggestion several months ago. So we're doing that, and the Phototherapy Facebook group live is just a great place to share pictures and get comments. But I would say during this lockdown, I am playing a lot of bass guitar. So, and it's not that.
See, next time I have you on, you need to play.
Oh, I will. I mean, I was working on triplets. Well, you know Led Zeppelin, Bono, right? The drummer.
Yeah.
He was like amazing. Rather than just hitting on the quarter notes, he would do the triplets, like in a lot of their songs. So I got the triplets down. What a triplet is, you play three notes in the space of one note. It's like do-do-do. So it's really I got that down. So I was playing some jazz. You know Jefferson Graham, right?
Yeah.
So great jazz guitar player. So I hope to play some jazz with him someday.
People don't talk about Jefferson. I actually recommended him to Scott Bourne for Scott's new guitar podcast that he's doing, and I know you were on it as well. So there's another podcast you should check out. There's room for everybody, people. There's room for everybody. So again, to everybody, and to Rick, thank you very, very much. And to everybody else, thank you so much for joining us on Behind the Shot. This is the show where we try and get inside the mind of great photographers by taking a closer look behind one of their shots from conception to completion, all the stories and challenges that happen in between. My name is Steve Brazill. Feel free to follow me online, reach out as you wish, and we will see you on the next show.